So here's how I do it. I got my, say this is my flyer. Okay, you got to obviously put a lot more content. Do you understand that, right? I go to File and then Download. You could download it as a PDF or a Word. Those are the only things I could really open in Blackboard. If you upload into Blackboard a Google document, it will not open without me having your password, and I can't do that. So do the Word document or the PDF, okay? And then if you have the Word, if you already have a Word program, I can show you how to do the bifold or trifold on the Word. I believe you go to Design. No, hold on. You go to Layout, and you could do the columns. Okay, and that will help you. Like if you want to do a trifold, you just click that if you're on a Word document. And obviously you don't have to convert that. Okay, what were your other questions on the flyer? When did I say it was due? Does somebody remember? I think it's 5th.
November.
5? Yes? Yep. Due November 5th. Okay. And put lots of information here. But make it look, I'm doing this in 2 minutes, but make it look obviously really pretty and unique. Again, here are just some examples if you wanted to have a background color. It's one of these flyers that you'd pick up at the doctor's office if you were sitting there waiting and just to browse through a health topic. Okay? Any other questions on your flyer? And that is due 2 weeks from Thursday on November 5th. Okay? The good news is you do have off on November 3rd. So if you want to dedicate that hour in your day to do the flyer, I'm almost positive you could get this entire project done in an hour, if not at most 2. But pick something you're interested in, maybe a food you like or your cultural food. I've had students do cultural foods of maybe somebody that they were dating or their spouse or their friends. Or a disease that maybe a family member is enduring, and perhaps you could come up with some foods that will help them or that aggravate the condition, and you can make them aware of that. Did anybody already pick their topic they want to tell the class? Just for some ideas?
Yeah, I'm doing like how every color of food you eat impacts your health. So like, I don't know, like orange with carrots or like red with the heart.
Good. And I do remember you saying that in the past. Anybody else have a topic they're doing?
I'm doing anorexia and all the side effects and everything and how it impacts the person.
Okay, good.
I'm doing like the supplement pills.
Okay.
Like which are most effective and stuff, and like the side effects and stuff of it.
Yeah, I think, didn't you send me a draft of it already?
Yeah, I didn't like the actual one.
Yeah. I do remember that. All right. Anybody else thinking of, or even if I didn't approve it, if you have a topic in mind right now, you could verbally say it and then I'll tell you yes or no. Okay, just think about it. Then we will move on with today's topic, foodborne illnesses. And this is, sometimes people call it food poisoning. So there are organisms all around us that will cause diseases. Typically, we call them pathogens. The word is on here for you. And a pathogen could be a virus, a bacteria, a fungus, or potentially we could also include in this category like a pest or an insect. Cooking will kill most of the pathogens, but not necessarily all of them. There are a couple that might perhaps survive. And the one I'm thinking of that survives cooking is if the bacteria actually secretes toxins into the food. So the cooking will kill bacteria, but not necessarily the toxins that it might secrete, which is kind of gross. This topic is pretty gross, okay? But what I can tell you is I'm willing to bet that each of us has either gotten foodborne illness at some point in our life or know somebody that has had it that's close to us. So this is what we're talking about today, and what we're going to learn about are what are the risky foods that if you want to avoid getting food poisoning, which food should we kind of minimize or maybe avoid eating? The causes of foodborne illness, signs and symptoms, treatment options, when we should go to the doctor, and then there's a couple additional concerns. The preview for a couple of weeks from now when we talk about nutrition through the lifespan, two special populations that really have to be careful with foodborne illness are pregnant women or babies. Any pregnant woman who believes that she has a foodborne illness should go to a doctor right away, immediate care, or call your regular doctor, if need be, ER. And then the babies, obviously. With the pregnant women, the biggest concern is an adult might be able to tolerate the pathogen with its immune system, but the infant would not. Same thing with babies. The infant's immune system might not be strong enough to fight off the pathogen. Also, a very important concept is dehydration. There have been people who the most serious problem associated with foodborne illness is simply the dehydration. If somebody has diarrhea or vomiting, they could get so dehydrated it could become life-threatening. So we've got to worry about that, especially in little kids, because they don't have a lot of water to begin with. So this is what we're learning this week. Now, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to ask you guys to talk. Do you ever think you had a foodborne illness, also known as food poisoning? And if so, tell us just, if you wish, this is all optional information, obviously, where you think you got it from, what did you feel like, and how did you recover? Go ahead. And again, I can't see whose hand is up, so if you could tell the class your name and then go ahead and explain what happened.
Okay, so I'm Mata. I got food poisoning. I was probably a freshman in high school. So usually, my family, we don't really eat out. Like, we don't eat fast food and stuff like that. Everything's really homemade, and we were running late somewhere, and we all like wanted lunch. So we stopped at White Castle to get like the chicken rings.
Yeah.
And me and my sister and my stepdad, all three of us, we got sick from the chicken rings. They must have been like old or something. I have no idea. But one after the other, we started like just throwing up like constantly. Everything that like any type of liquid that we tried to like take down, like we just couldn't keep in our systems. Like I think like we all got hospitalized. So like,
Oh God, really?
yeah, like it was so bad because so my mom also like my little brother, he was like a baby at the time, so it was so hard because she was taking care of him, but like me and my sister were like on the floor because like we started getting like super hot and tingly, but then at the same time we were getting like the chills. So it was just like all over the place. Like it was so crazy. And then we ended up going to the hospital, and the doctors said that we were like extremely dehydrated and that we had to be put on like IVs because of how much like we didn't have in our system, like no type of hydration. And we were there, so like they didn't admit us, but me and my sister both had to share like one room, and it was just the worst experience in my entire life. 3 weeks after I got home, I wasn't able to eat anything. I had to like drink like dry bone broth because that was like the only thing that like I could keep down. But yeah, it was something like, and then ever since then, like I refuse. Like, I will never walk into like White Castle again, or like even fast food. Like, I rarely ever eat it because I just have like that trauma, you know? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So even before you had it, did you eat at fast food places and that was the one that made you stop, or did you just really rarely eat there to begin with?
So me and my family, you know, like I'm assuming like most people, like if we're in a rush, like we would probably stop at like McDonald's to get like chicken nuggets or something. And then just this one time, like we went to White Castle, and I never was a big fan of it, but you know, I wanted it to be easy for my family, and we
Yeah.
had the chicken rings, thinking, okay, this is probably like the best thing on their menu, and we all got sick. It was so bad.
That's a terrible story. I think you can teach this section of the class right now because you know so much about it, unfortunately. I'll just add to it and maybe ask a couple things. I think what was going on was you probably were running a fever and that's why you felt hot. But then at the same time, the chills were probably occurring because you were dehydrated. So that must have been an awful feeling.
No, yeah, it was. It kind of felt like I had the flu,
Hmm.
just I was vomiting way more than like I would if I had the flu.
Yeah. And it took almost 2 weeks till you can eat again solid food.
Yeah, so it happened right before Christmas too, so like I couldn't eat any type of Christmas like
Yeah.
uh, dinner, nothing. I had to like drink
Oh.
broth.
And did you know if the doctor told you what kind of pathogen it was, or you weren't aware?
I have no idea, and it was so long ago.
Yeah.
Even if I like asked my mom, we probably wouldn't even remember.
Did your mom get sick?
So,
Did
so it was weird because my mom, my brother, my sister, me, and then my stepdad, we all ate the same thing, but
huh?
only three of us got sick.
Huh. You might have been the unlucky ones to get the three old food and then maybe a couple new
Yeah,
food.
we must have. It was
Well, thank you for sharing that awful experience. But if the rest of us could reflect back on what Mata said, she's a good example of all the signs and symptoms. You also, Mata, reiterated the importance of hydration. A lot of people do end up in the doctors because they're dehydrated. And that's the life-threatening part about a foodborne illness, or any illness, in fact. Even if I was to talk about COVID, the people that are ending up in the ER a lot of times are dehydrated. And so one of the biggest things that we tell people when they're impacted by a pathogen is stay hydrated, because when you start running a fever, the water leaves your body very rapidly. And when you don't have enough water, your immune system can't work well. You see how it's like a vicious cycle. The fever's making you dehydrated, but your immune system's compromised and trying to fight off a pathogen at the same time. So you've got to keep drinking. And I don't know if any of you heard of what Mata was talking about in terms of what she was able to ingest. You were calling it, Mata, tell me again.
it was like bone broth. It's super plain and bland. It was disgusting, but it was the only thing that the doctor said like this is what you need to drink to like technically like get the nutrients that you need in your body,
Yeah.
and like water of course to be drink as well, because any type of food that we would try to eat, it would just end up coming back out.
Yeah. And if that happens when you guys got foodborne illness, if you um, vomit as soon as you drink the water, don't try to eat solid food, because that's going to even be worse for your system at that point in time. The one we say to start eating solid food is when you could drink fluids and keep them down. So broth would be a decent option. Some people do Pedialyte or Gatorade because you want the electrolytes and the sugar. Okay, if we're just putting in water when we're sick with any pathogen, whether it causes foodborne illness, flu, COVID, colds, we need to get sugar and electrolytes, not just water, right? The sugar is your energy, and the electrolytes help you use that water. So if you could, brainstorm the broth, soups, um, the
Uh,
Gatorade, Pedialyte. Go ahead.
so other than like Gatorade and like yeah, the like electrolyte ones. My mom makes us drink like warm, like she makes us sip warm ginger ale
Yep.
to like try to soothe the stomach and stuff.
Yeah, ginger actually is used as a medicine in many parts of the world to help calm the stomach down. So ginger ale is a fantastic idea. Believe it or not, when I was little, I remember my mother making us eat Jello as like the first solid food if we were sick. It really is just liquid, believe it or not. It's just that gelatin that kind of keeps it together, but really Jello is just a liquid. But I think she was doing it more so for the sugar to get that, simple sugar to get the carbs into the body for energy because you need that when you're fighting an illness. Does anyone else have an example of foodborne illness or food poisoning that they had gotten?
Um, what's it called? It's not like a long story, but I
Okay.
made like this is like when I was little. I was with my babysitter and he made like hot chocolate, and I didn't know the word for like expire, right? So I was drinking it and I was like, the milk was expired. I didn't know that, but like I couldn't tell the word. All I knew was like it tasted horrible, right? And he would kind of get upset. He'd be like, "Just drink it." I'm like, "It tastes bad." So he tasted it and he spit it out. He's like, "This is expired," and yeah,
Oh, really? Did it,
pretty
ma-
much it.
it made you feel sick or you just tasted funny?
It made me kind of sick. Like it was expired, but it didn't do that much.
Okay. All right. So it's a good example to say, now kids can't do that. So we would have to do that for them, right? Check the dates on your products, especially dairy food. That will spoil rather quickly with pathogens or, meats, animal products, I should say. But any food, we want to check the expiration date prior to eating that. Okay, thank you. Now, I did hear another hand go up. Did someone else want to talk?
Yeah, it's Patty. I just want to say a fun fact about like milk when it's expired. So
Oh,
like when it like the little part is dented, like there's these little circles in milk, like plastic milk bottles that are like dented inwards, and supposedly when that pops out, that means the milk is expired.
okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I do think I know what you're talking about. They're pretty large, right? They're pretty large indentation.
It could be like the little, not the full gallons, but like the
Say it again.
they're usually not like, they could be big gallons too, but there's also like the smaller sized ones. But yeah, usually the ones that come in like the plastic containers.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else think they had gotten foodborne illness in the past or food poisoning?
As a child, I ate. So I was in Ukraine, and then there's like this foods that are super unhealthy. They have meat inside and bread surrounding that, and it's all cooked on oil. So me and my dad and my mom and my brother, we ate that. We felt like super dizzy. We were thirsty. We had fever. We did not have any symptoms of like throwing up. We just like our stomach were like hurting so bad, and it was just like making the sounds, weird sounds. Like we were not throwing out, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
did not end up to the hospital. We had fever. We had all of the symptoms except the throwing up. And the thing is, like with the oil, sometimes they do not change the oil and they can keep it for the whole day, which makes food really bad.
Yeah, we use that. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Definitely, it could simply be just really bad pain that we get with foodborne illness. And did you say that or a restaurant? Where did you get food with the oil from?
Yeah, restaurant. So it's like stand where like it's small kind of building, not a building with the windows where they cook
Yeah.
inside. So it's like it's not even a restaurant.
Mhm. I think I know what you mean. We have some of those in our areas too, like maybe whether it's a cart or a food truck, it's something kind of maybe more, not necessarily a large building, but on the side of the road, they may be selling some foods. Food, food cart or food stand, yeah. I often wonder about those food trucks. I know my husband actually went and got tacos from a food truck a couple weeks ago. We don't have any food trucks regularly coming in our neighborhood, so he thought that was cool that one weekend this food truck came and he had bought the food from it. Luckily, we did not get sick. I'm not going to tell you the amount of times I've gotten foodborne illness because it would take us the whole period. I have gotten foodborne illness from Pizza Hut once, from a different, I can't even remember the name, but a different pizza company. They didn't cook the sausage thoroughly before they put it on the pizza. I had gotten it from a banquet hall. It was like a family party that my sister-in-law had at a banquet hall. She had like 100 people there, and I want to tell you, I believe like 70 of us got sick, and we think it was from the soup. And that was actually the week before Thanksgiving. So I was kind of like, I think it was Mata that said she couldn't eat Christmas dinner. I was the person not eating Thanksgiving, which everybody was around me eating all this food, and I was just, not able to. And then the worst of them all, believe it or not, my dad made food once at home. And a lesson for you guys is what he had done, I don't want you guys to ever do. He was at a picnic in summer, and the people were cooking hamburgers, and there was leftover raw meat in the cooler. And he said, "Oh, I'll take that home, and I'll use it." So he took the raw hamburger home and put it in the freezer. And, several months later, he took it out and he made it. And I was deathly ill. I was, along with some of you, with the fevers. I did throw up, I think, once or twice. I had a horrible headache. And that was probably the worst foodborne illness I've ever had. But I had it a lot. And the lesson for knowing that is, even though you know all of this stuff, we still maybe might get this disease of foodborne illness if somebody else is preparing the food, right? Especially, as you can see on your screen right now, 60% of cases of foodborne illness are from restaurants. And if we add in banquet halls or caterers, that's 75%. So when other people are cooking our food, we're at more risk. And I think, again, I agree with Mata. We rarely will eat out, and this is one of the reasons why. I don't know who's preparing my food. We have a few restaurants we'll go to where we know the people, only because we've gone there so often, where we would know the people and never gotten ill. So if we're going to eat out, I try to stick with, that option rather than, randomly going to different places all the time. Another horror story that we had is my husband actually got sick on a vacation. So we when we go on vacation, not that we go that often or not, but you tend to eat out because you don't have the room or the stuff to cook yourself. So we were at a restaurant, and I remember the night that we had gotten home, he got sick. We were in our hotel room, I'll put it that way. He had gotten sick, both vomiting and diarrhea. And the horror for me was sitting there waiting, like, am I going to get this too? But luckily I did not. Only he did. And it was brutal because he was like in the bathroom all night, one way or the other. It was brutal. And I was just like waiting. I was making myself so stressed out, waiting to see if I would get it or not. All right, let's move on. So the food could be at risk from the time that it's grown to preparation till when we eat it. So we often think of foodborne illness of something that happens when somebody's preparing our food. But unfortunately, it could be infected with a pathogen at the farm where it's grown, or when it's on the trucks getting transported, or even in the store if it's not kept at proper temperature in the store. When I mentioned the word proper temperature, that really is key. Is that we have to keep the food either extremely cold or hot, because the pathogens can't survive well in hot and cold temperatures. Pathogens love room temperature, and that's where they thrive. The bacteria and the viruses will multiply rapidly at room temperature. So if we want to try to minimize foodborne illness, we have to think, let's keep this food cold from the minute it's grown or hot until we eat that. Top 10 improper food handling practices. And the first one is not cooling it enough. So think about it, whether it's dairy or meat, if that refrigerator and freezer aren't cold enough, there's going to be some problems with that food. And there's a rule that we call 240-140 rule. If you have a little notepad next to you, write that down. It's probably in the PowerPoint somewhere, but 240-140. Don't keep food longer than 2 hours at room temperature. That's really a practice you should start doing if you haven't yet. And where we say 40 to 140, that's room temperature. Refrigerators should be colder than 40 degrees. And if we're cooking it, it should be hotter than 140 degrees. So that room temperature is what we want to avoid. Don't keep foods longer than 2 hours between the temperatures of 40 and 140. Okay. Another issue is cross-contamination. Hopefully you don't do this, and I'm going to give you a blatant example of cross-contamination. Let's say you're cooking a meal for someone and you grab a knife and you cut the raw chicken with that knife. Don't use the same thing if you're making a salad. Don't use the same knife. You wouldn't do that, right? I don't think anybody would do that. But it is something that might occur if someone doesn't know any better, if they're not educated necessarily in preventing foodborne illness. They may cut raw chicken and maybe not even clean it off good enough and just wipe it with a rag or rinse it under water real quickly and then go ahead and cut like tomatoes and lettuce. And so that would be an example, unfortunately, of cross-contamination. Lastly is washing your hands. Okay, here's the name of pathogens. For most of us that got sick, the doctors usually don't tell us what the pathogen is. They're probably not going to run that test unless you are needing medicine, an antibiotic, or interventions so bad that it might be life-threatening. Most of us that get food poisoning, we feel awful, but we should be able to recover on our own if we rest and replace the fluid and electrolytes. But these are some ugly names of pathogens that do cause foodborne illness. And if you look towards the right, I have them in red here. These two are the ones that cause the most. So if you reflect back on the ones you guys have had, it may have been, what does this add up to? Almost 70% of foodborne illnesses are norovirus and salmonella. Now, norovirus, they say there's like thousands of them, different types. So you may get one norovirus one year and a different strand the next year. You'd get sick both times. Okay, typically with viruses, when we get a virus, our immune system fights it and builds off antibodies, and then we wouldn't get sick from that same strand again. But when you have a virus that has multiple strands, like the norovirus, then you could get sick more than once. Now, the norovirus, the signs and symptoms are stomachache, diarrhea, and vomiting. A lot of people think that is the stomach flu. So if you heard somebody ever say, I had the stomach flu, typically it's a norovirus. These are also the viruses that you may have heard in the news. Every so often, a cruise ship has an outbreak of some illness, and everybody's vomiting or everybody's got diarrhea, and they have to send the cruise ship home early because everybody's sick. Usually it's a norovirus. It's highly, highly contagious. One person has it, everybody around them is going to get it. And what happens is, even let's say I have norovirus and I go sit down in a restaurant, that people could catch that norovirus from me. It doesn't necessarily have to only be in the food. Or if a chef had norovirus and prepared the food, you could potentially get that from them as well. Okay, so these are just some names that I want you to be familiar with. I believe the discussion says if you know what virus or pathogen caused you to get sick, write it down. But it's okay if in the discussion you say you're not sure, because for most of mine, I don't know either. Here's some ugly pictures of them. Isn't that gross? Here you have the norovirus. Here you have a bacteria, fungus, and a worm. I haven't heard of a lot of people getting sick with worms in the United States, but if you do go to some of the more underdeveloped countries, these are in the water supply. And so you can actually ingest that, unfortunately, and that might grow inside you. And it's gross. And I heard gross stories about these worms. I've not known anybody, luckily, that's had that. All right, somebody raised their hand, and I appreciate that, you guys. If you want to interject and talk, go ahead. It gives me a little bit of a break as well.
Hi, it's me, Patty.
Uh-huh.
Looking at those strawberries at the bottom, it looks like they're like, like getting all fuzzy, and like I've seen that on fruits before. And do you feel like it's safe when you like grab fruits like around that and wash those that are okay?
I do. Okay, so let's say I
I do
opened.
too.
Yeah, I opened. In fact, I bought strawberries today, and there was one. It didn't have mold on it, but it looked like it was already spoiled, so I threw it out, but I'm going to keep the rest. I'm going to tell you, though, if I was to give you the textbook answer and the doctor's answer, they would say throw them all out because there could potentially be a microscopic fungus on one next to it. What you may want to do is throw the ones out that are touching that particular fruit or vegetable. But when I give you my opinion and say I don't throw everything out, I typically will wash the other ones that are far away from it and look still safe to eat. You know, no matter what we eat, it probably has a pathogen on it. Okay, a small amount. And our immune system typically will fight off a small amount of a bacteria, a virus. No problem, you don't feel sick. Bacteria is in the air we breathe. I mean, it's everywhere. It's in dust. So we have strong immune systems. We can fight that stuff off. But what happens is with foodborne illness, if there is a lot of the pathogen on the food, like thousands of it, like it's already multiplying on that food, it could overwhelm your immune system and you feel sick from that. So let's say we ate this strawberry, it has some mold on it. If we ate the one next to it, it has maybe, tiny bit of mold, our immune system will kill that off. We won't feel sick. If we ate this big one with a lot of the mold on it or fungus, that's too much for our immune system to handle. We would feel sick. So hopefully that makes sense. If I had to give you the teacher definition, I would have to say probably throw it out. But I'll give you, my personal opinion. Throw it out, anything that's touching it or around it out, and you might be able to save some of the ones further away from it. Moving on to how to protect your food from getting to look like this. If you guys buy berries, they spoil really quickly. Berries will spoil within a couple days. An organic berry even spoils faster than that. An organic berry might spoil like in a day. Okay, we'll talk about organics Thursday. Organic food spoils faster than the regular conventional food because they don't have any pesticides or preservatives. But what do you want to do to make it last as long as possible? Get a bowl of cool water and put some vinegar in it. Maybe like a quarter cup of vinegar to like a gallon of water. And you soak your berries or grapes or any produce. You soak it in that for about 2, 3, 4 minutes in that liquid. And that vinegar actually prevents the pathogens from growing. So your produce would last longer. What I do, like for instance, grapes, I'll soak them in this vinegar water and then rinse them off and put them in the fridge. Rinse them off and dry them. Dry them. The water will help the pathogens survive. So if I dry that and rid the food of water, then the pathogen will not have that nutrient needed to survive. And then just put it in the fridge. You don't taste the vinegar. Some people always say, well, does the fruit taste like vinegar when you're done? No, it absolutely does not, especially if you just rinse it all off and dry it well. You're not going to know the difference. But One thing to note about the water is these pathogens need it to survive. So if we could get rid of as much as possible, that helps prevent foodborne illness. And this is one of the reasons that fast food restaurants have a lot of salt in their food. The salt gets rid of water from food. It literally takes the water out of food. So if we're eating like a hamburger that has a ton of salt in it, a lot of that water is gone from that food. So the salt is preventing foodborne illness. But in high amounts of salt, over 2,300 milligrams a day, that could be a risk factor for cardiovascular disease for us too. So we have to, weigh our options. Symptoms of foodborne illness. I think, our people that spoke pretty much covered most of these. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, cramping in the stomach, fever, bloody stools, or in my case, I had neck pain and headaches. When should you go to the doctor with foodborne illness? What do you guys think? When would you tell someone that you knew who had foodborne illness they should go to the doctor based on signs and symptoms?
Like, like when they're like, kind of like, they keep on vomiting.
Yeah, if they don't stop any of these signs and symptoms, if it's constant vomiting and diarrhea, that would be a good indicator to go to the doctor. Anybody else?
I would say after like 4 days.
Yes, I always get confused on how many days. I think my PowerPoint says 3 days. But if you've gone a few days and the symptoms aren't getting better, if they're getting better, that means your immune system's fighting it. But if they're not getting better or they're getting worse, definitely go to the doctor. Anyone else? If blood is coming out everywhere, go ahead.
I think once like fever starts happening.
Yes, have a fever, that would be a good time to go to the doctor for the foodborne illness. I hesitate to even say when to go to the doctor nowadays with COVID. If it was me personally, if I suspected COVID, I'd probably go to the doctor. If I was to teach this class any time before 2020, I used to say to people when they got a fever, if the fever is 101 or less for an adult, you could probably not necessarily go to a doctor. Fevers are good, actually, are a good thing. And any of my nursing students probably would agree with me on this. A fever is your body's attempt to kill the pathogen, because a lot of these pathogens can't survive at high temperatures. And if the body moves the temperature up to 100 degrees, the pathogen will die. So if we thought we had a cold or a flu, we might not necessarily run to the doctor with that fever or take medicine to lower the fever immediately. Now, fast forward to 2020. I mean, I don't have all the info on COVID because it's so new. If I had anybody I knew right now, me, my kids, my family, friends that had a fever, I would call the doctor right away because you just don't know. Actually, one of my friends right now has COVID. She told me she felt like she just had a really bad cold and she wasn't going to go to the doctor. But because she didn't want to spread it potentially to other people, she did go and she got tested and she had it. So, throw that out the window. If any of you have fever at this point in time, call your doctor, see what they want you to do. I know that we're getting a little off topic with COVID, but, I have these symptoms on here, and believe it or not, other than bloody stool, all these symptoms could be COVID as well. And so if you have any of these weird symptoms and you're just not sure, what I can say is either call your doctor. If you don't have a doctor, you can call one of these pharmacies that have a doctor on site. I know that Walgreens, CVS, they often have physician assistants on site, and they could tell you whether you should go in for a test or where, more importantly, you should go for a test. Go ahead. If somebody had a question? Anybody have a question?
No, I'm
Go
pretty
ahead.
sure someone. No, I don't have a question. I was just saying, someone was like just like commenting on like COVID.
Go ahead. Do you have a comment on COVID?
No, I was saying that like someone commented on COVID.
Yeah. Okay. What did they say? Is it in the discussion room? I mean, the chat room?
Oh yeah, it was just like talking about like how it sucks and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, it is something that none of us has ever experienced before, a pandemic in our life. I mean, I'm 48 years old. I've never in my life went through a pandemic, but this one. So it's a learning experience, I think, for all of us. Moving forward, I think we're all going to be a little bit more conscious about trying to prevent the spread of pathogens, in the future. All right. So anytime with a foodborne illness now, if we have eaten something and as soon as we eat it, we feel sick. Or another example is eating at a restaurant, and by the time you get home, you're like running to the bathroom to have diarrhea, or you're running to the bathroom to vomit. Chances are you got foodborne illness. And, that has happened to me in the past too. Again, I don't eat out a ton because I've had cases where I would eat out. By the time I got home, I was like, I got to go to the bathroom. Those are all cases of foodborne illness. If any of them run a fever, blood coming out, either vomit or stool, headache, neck pain, or if it doesn't go away in like 3 days, you should go to the doctor. What I told you guys earlier, if a pregnant woman is suspected of having it, or a baby, or a young child, probably go to the doctor right away, even if it's mild symptoms. Okay. All right, let's look at some unsafe foods. Undercooked is what I'm going to tell you. If it's not cooked to the proper temperature, and I have a screenshot for you in a moment, what temperature we need to cook foods to be safe. We need to heat up these foods to high temperatures to try to kill off any pathogen that's on them. 24% of foodborne illnesses come from fish, undercooked fish. Mollusks are clams, oysters, and mussels. Chicken and dairy. And it says nearly all unpasteurized. Some people do consume raw milk or raw cheese that has not been pasteurized. If you were to go to the grocery store right now and grab a gallon of milk, that's pasteurized. If you buy it directly from a farmer or farmer's market, it may not be pasteurized. It may be considered unpasteurized. And that means it wasn't heated to high temperatures to kill the pathogens. So undercooked food is what is usually the primary culprit in foodborne illnesses. I have some other items up here for you. Why do you think salad bar items would be a higher risk food?
Because there's a lot of like movement and it's cold.
What do you mean movement?
Like when people like walk around the food bars and
Yeah.
they're not really like completely closed.
Yeah, they're walking around the food bar, maybe they're coughing on it, even talking, some secretions may come from them. They're touching those handles, right, of the utensils. Our hands are very dirty. They're touching the handles. So it's the people that are interacting with that. Was there another person that wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, also the right here where it says food left out longer than 2 hours. Like typically in a salad bar, like you don't know how long the food has.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it gets warm and like bacteria starts to grow on it.
Yes, you're right. The salad bar or these buffets, which I'm not seeing a lot of them due to COVID. I heard the Old Country buffet is actually closing. But any of these buffet type things, you don't know how long that food has been sitting there. And the thing is, we want to follow the 240-140 rule. We've got to keep our food colder than 40 or hotter than 140. Otherwise, that room temperature With a little bit of water, pathogens are having a party. Pathogens will grow very quickly at room temperature if water is present. So how do we prevent this stuff from happening? Wash your hands. Keep your cold food cold, hot food hot. Follow the 240-140 rule. Wash everything. We're going to wash our hands, our utensils, our kitchen sink. I heard somebody recommend washing down your whole kitchen counters at least once a week. I usually use those bleach wipes. Or if you want to make your own bleach wipe, just get a bucket of water, put in there like a splash of bleach out of a gallon, and just wipe it down with a towel. You can just do that too. Does anyone have any other recommendations to prevent foodborne illness? Check your dates. Oh, I was going to show you what temperature to cook the meat to. So here, clean your hands and surfaces. Don't cross-contaminate. Don't put raw chicken in your food that you're going to consume without cooking it. Cook it to proper temperatures. Keep it chilled in your refrigerator or freezer. Here's the temperature list. This is something my mind cannot memorize, so I have to look this up when I'm cooking. If all else fails, just use the highest temperature. So when you're cooking food in the oven or grill, you want to use a thermometer to check and make sure it reaches these temperatures. So if you got a turkey or a chicken, you want that to be 180 degrees or higher. Okay. Steaks, 145 degrees or higher. Hamburgers, if you do ground beef or ground poultry, 165 or higher. Do you guys check your temperatures when you cook?
No.
When
Go
I'm
ahead.
using like a skillet, yeah, but no, not really.
Yeah, the time I do it is when I'm having like a lot of people over. If it's just me and my family, I typically don't. But if I'm having a major dinner where I'm serving a holiday dinner or a barbecue in the backyard, I will, just to be a little bit safer. I think I also kind of recommend it really with that chicken and turkey because it's so large of a piece of meat. If we get sick, drink clear fluids. Hopefully ones that have electrolytes. I know that we talked about ginger ale, a clear Gatorade, or clear Pedialyte. If it's severe, go to the physician. And I have some ideas for you here. Add to those ideas of when to go to the doctor if the person is pregnant, a baby, an infant, a small child. If they have any other diseases. If they had cancer or diabetes, and they also are suspected of this foodborne illness, we might want to take them right away. You may take the food with you that you suspect, but a lot of times the doctors don't want to get involved and they say they don't want to deal with that or even test it unless it's life-threatening. Okay? Additional concerns. We get used to the water we're drinking in the area we live. So we live in Midwest, and if we drink the water in the Midwest, we get used to that. Our immune system get used to it. And we could fight off any pathogens that are in that water. If you go to a place on vacation or to visit someone where you don't live year-round and you drink their water, it may have different pathogens, and it could make you ill. And this would be the case, like they say, if you go to another country and you drink their water, because it's really far away from where we live. Your immune system's not used to that. You could become ill. I know that the first time I took my kid to Wisconsin, he got sick off the water. Now the adults didn't, and we have a stronger immune system, but he had never experienced water outside of where he had lived. And I think he was like 2 years old, and he ended up in the ER. We brought him to the ER because he was running a fever for no reason. It went up to about 102. And they said it potentially could just be the bacteria in the water that he's not used to. So what would you do? Maybe if you're traveling, don't drink necessarily tap water. You could want to bottle water or other beverages. And also worry about that ice, though. Sometimes people say, well, I'll just drink like iced tea from a bottle or juice or what else might come from a bottle or a can, and then you put ice cubes in it. Well, that ice cube might be with the tap water. We're going to do organic pros and cons Thursday. Okay. I'm going to talk real quickly here about this, and then we're going to watch a video. I just want to talk 1 minute before this video. It says additional concerns about fish. We will discuss this again when we're talking about pregnancy and nutrition. But some of these fish that we're catching in the lake may have mercury in them, or pollutants. One of them is what's called PBB. And if you study this slide real quickly, these factories are giving off some mercury as a pollution. And it kind of gets into the atmosphere, and then when it rains, it will come down to the earth in the water, and these fish may ingest that. And then if we eat large fish with potentially a large amount of this mercury or toxins in them, we could potentially get sick from that. Now, usually adults have absolutely no risk of getting sick from mercury in fish. It's the small people. It is pregnant women with a baby that's very small. That baby potentially could get sick, or very young children. So what they recommend is if you're pregnant or have a young child, not to eat a lot of large fish out of the ocean. And when I say a lot, it's no more than 1 per week. And I don't know how many of you are eating large fish out of the ocean more than once a week. But you know, we want to limit fish that have high levels of mercury in them. The good news is the stuff that we're typically eating in the Midwest, we don't have high mercury fish around here. And these are safe. We're eating like canned tuna, shrimp, tilapia, or smaller fish even are safe. If we were to say like a bluegill or crappie, crab meat, that's typically safe. The ones that have high levels of mercury are like sharks, swordfish, mackerel. It's just, you know, it's here. And this is the tuna that's coming out of the ocean, not necessarily the one in a can, but high levels of tuna steak, swordfish, things like that. We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we get to pregnancy. And when we're looking at this, you can eat anything off this lowest slide here, the lowest level of mercury at any point. The kids and pregnant women need to watch out. Don't eat off on this high list, and only like once a week off of this middle list. Okay, and you can keep this for reference. If the ladies get pregnant or you have kid, you can always look this up and say, which is safe for my kid to eat every week, and which one do I need to kind of limit? All right, I'm going to show you guys a quick video, and then we're actually done for today after the video. And we'll talk on Thursday about organic food and GMOs.
I just saw a patient with a serious case of foodborne illness, or food poisoning, as most people call it. Foodborne illness has a wide range of symptoms and can go from something I ate doesn't agree with me to being bad enough to cause a serious health problem, or even death. And most foodborne illness symptoms don't present right away. It often takes 24 to 48 hours after eating the contaminated food. But in some instances, the incubation period may be longer. Based on what this patient told me, we aren't sure if it's from a restaurant or from food she prepared at home. That's why I make sure my patients understand that everyone has a role to play in ensuring food safety. Farmers, food companies, transporters, retailers, consumers, and the government. In fact, the FDA issued regulations to carry out the FDA Food Safety Modernization Act of 2011. This was the most sweeping reform of food safety laws in more than 70 years. The new rules require food producers to do more to identify and prevent problems before they might happen, and they set science-based safety standards for growing, harvesting, and packing produce. Sometimes contaminated food still reaches consumers, and the government can't regulate how consumers handle food. That's why we all need to know how to minimize the risk, especially for our patients who are at higher risk. Pregnant women, young children, older, people with immune systems weakened by illness or medical treatment. Being smart about how we shop for food can do a lot to prevent exposure to the two most common foodborne agents, viruses and bacteria. When it comes to foodborne illness, Most of us think of undercooked meats and eggs, but raw fruits and vegetables can pose a risk. So can lunch meats and deli-type salads. There are a few things you can do while at the grocery store. Check the sell-by dates, use plastic bags for raw meat and poultry, and keep them separated from the other groceries in your cart. And only buy pasteurized dairy products and juice. Food recalls happen when contaminants are discovered in food products. They happen almost every day, and these foods could be almost anything. They range from fresh produce to peanut butter to meat and poultry. It's important to know that there may be nothing you as a consumer can do to make these foods safe. The best thing to do if they are recalled is just throw them out. For a list of current recalls, foodsafety.gov. Keeping the family safe is a priority in any household. So here are 4 basic steps to prevent foodborne illness in the home. Wash your hands often with warm or cold water and soap for at least 20 seconds. Before and after handling food, using the bathroom, changing diapers, or handling pets. Cleaning fruits and vegetables is important in order to get rid of soil that may remain on the produce. But there are a variety of other reasons to clean. Bacteria, viruses, or parasites can be on that produce as well. So make sure to rinse all produce thoroughly under cold water to help reduce your risk. And use a vegetable brush, especially on fruits and vegetables that have a skin or rind that won't be eaten. Rinse produce before you cut it, because if there are bacteria, viruses, or other disease-causing microorganisms on that skin, and you cut it with a knife, that knife can carry pathogen right into the fruit. Clean your cutting boards and other surfaces between preparing raw meat, poultry, seafood, or eggs, and preparing foods that won't be cooked, like salad veggies, so you don't contaminate the other foods. Or use separate cutting boards. Just as you separate your raw from other groceries in your shopping cart to avoid cross-contamination, do the same thing in your refrigerator. Never put raw meat, poultry, seafood, or fresh eggs anywhere where they may contaminate ready-to-eat food. I'm going to put this chicken in the fridge to marinate for a couple hours. And I don't want it to be above or near my veggies, just in case the bag leaks. Some people like to reuse marinades for sauces and gravies, but never reuse marinades that were used with raw meats, unless you bring them to a boil first, so that you kill any pathogens. Food is safely cooked when it reaches a high enough internal temperature to kill the harmful pathogens that cause illness. There are different safe temperatures for different foods, so check out the minimum safe cooking temperatures chart at foodsafety.gov. It's very handy. Once you know the temperature your meat should be cooked to, check it with a food thermometer. While the chicken is cooking, I want to talk about refrigeration. You should refrigerate or freeze meat, poultry, eggs, seafood, and other perishables within 2 hours of purchasing or cooking. Cold temperatures slow the growth of harmful bacteria, but don't overstuff the fridge. Cold air needs to circulate to keep food safe. Your refrigerator should be 40 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, and your freezer should be 0 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. A lot of refrigerators don't have a temperature gauge. Many just have a dial that says colder or warmer. So, get yourself a thermometer like this one. I'm pretty sure this chicken is done, but I'm going to check it with the meat thermometer. And check that the meat is reaching the right internal temperature in several different places, so you know it's done. If you're like me, you love filling the house with family and friends and feeding them tons of food. So when you're prepping that big family dinner, never thaw food out on the counter, because that allows pathogens to multiply. You can thaw in the refrigerator or in cold running water, or you can use the microwave. But if you do, you'll have to cook the food right away. These methods take time, so make sure you plan well and give your food plenty of time to thaw the right way. If you have a buffet set up for your guests, you need to make sure cold foods stay cold and hot foods stay hot. And when you're with family and good friends, it's easy to sit and talk for hours and forget that the food is still out on the counter. So make sure the food's away within 2 hours to keep it safe. You don't want those delicious leftovers to make you sick. Leftovers can be kept in the refrigerator for 4 days or for 3 to 4 months. Although safe and definite, frozen leftovers can lose moisture and flavor when stored for longer time. As you can see, with these steps, we can keep food safe, healthy, and fun. If you should become ill and think that the cause may have been foodborne, report it to your primary care provider or your local health department. And for even more information about safe food handling, preparation, and useful tips, go online to fda.gov/food. For information about safe food storage, try the Food Keeper at foodsafety.gov.
Okay, guys, that'll be it for today. Know that we have a quiz and a discussion in this learning module. And if you were here when I took attendance, you guys could go. I think it looks like 2 people were not. And I'll see you guys on Thursday. Let's see. David, I do have you. Jalen, I have you now. Morgan, I have you. David, I have you for attendance. Amelia, I have you. Did you have a question or did you just want to check in attendance? Okay.